They say that some secrets are too dangerous to keep hidden. But when my millionaire husband discovered the real reason behind what happened to my dress at our company gala, the truth he revealed didn't just shock me, it completely transformed how I saw everything around me. What he showed me that night still gives me goosebumps, and I'm not sure I'll ever be the same. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Hi, I'm Isabella, and this story begins on what should have been one of the most triumphant nights of my life. But sometimes, the universe has different plans for us, and those plans often come disguised as disasters that actually lead us to our greatest breakthroughs. Let me take you back to where it all started. 2 years ago, I was working as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized consulting firm in Seattle. I wasn't wealthy, I wasn't connected, and I definitely wasn't prepared for how dramatically my world was about to shift. I was just a woman who believed in working hard, staying humble, and treating everyone with kindness, even when they didn't deserve it. That's when I met David Martinez. He wasn't just any client who walked into our office that rainy Thursday morning. He was the founder and CEO of Martinez Industries, a tech empire that had revolutionized data security for Fortune 500 companies. But what struck me most about David wasn't his success or his reputation. It was how he treated every single person in our office, from the CEO down to the intern who brought him coffee. David had this incredible ability to make everyone feel valued and heard. During our first meeting, while I was presenting our marketing strategy proposal, he asked me questions that went beyond the surface. He wanted to understand not just what we recommended, but why I personally believed it would work. No client had ever shown that level of genuine interest in my perspective before. Our professional relationship quickly evolved into something deeper. David started requesting that I personally handle all communications with his company. What began as weekly strategy meetings turned into long conversations about business philosophy, life goals, and our shared belief that success means nothing if you don't use it to lift others up. I found myself looking forward to those meetings more than anything else in my work week. 6 months later, David asked me to dinner, not as a client, but as a man who had fallen for a woman who challenged him intellectually and inspired him to be better. I'll never forget what he told me that night. Isabella, I've built my entire career on identifying potential that others overlook. You have something extraordinary, and I don't think you even realize it yet. Our relationship blossomed beautifully. David never made me feel small or inadequate because of our different backgrounds. Instead, he constantly encouraged me to dream bigger, think bolder, and believe in myself the way he believed in me. When he proposed a year later, it wasn't with a flashy public display or an enormous diamond. It was during a quiet moment in his office, after we'd just finished planning a scholarship program for underprivileged students studying business. He looked at me and said, "I want to spend my life building something meaningful with someone who shares my values. Will you marry me?" Our wedding was intimate and perfect, but transitioning into David's world of high-stakes business and sophisticated social circles, that was a journey I hadn't anticipated. Suddenly, I was attending board meetings as David's trusted advisor, hosting dinner parties for influential entrepreneurs, and being invited to exclusive events where million-dollar deals were casually discussed over cocktails. The most challenging part wasn't the lifestyle change. It was navigating the complex dynamics of David's business partnerships and the people who had been in his inner circle long before I arrived. Some welcomed me warmly, recognizing that David was happier and more focused than ever, but others viewed me with suspicion, wondering if I was truly qualified to have such influence in his personal and professional decisions. The most difficult relationship was with Samantha Rivers, David's business partner of 8 years and the chief operating officer of Martinez Industries. Samantha was brilliant, ambitious, and had been instrumental in building the company from a startup into the industry leader it had become. She was also beautiful, sophisticated, and had a history with David that went beyond just business. They had dated briefly before deciding to focus on their professional partnership. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Samantha never said anything directly inappropriate, but her subtle undermining was constant and calculated. During board meetings, she would question my suggestions just differently enough to make me doubt myself. At social events, she would redirect conversations away from topics where I might contribute meaningfully. Most painfully, she had a way of bringing up shared memories with David that excluded me entirely. Inside jokes about their early startup days, references to challenges they'd overcome together, reminiscences about people and places that predated my existence in David's life. I tried everything to build a positive relationship with Samantha. I acknowledged her contributions publicly, deferred to her expertise in areas where she clearly knew more than I did, and even suggested strategies that would highlight her strengths within the company. Nothing worked. If anything, my efforts to be gracious seemed to intensify her subtle hostility. David was aware of the tension, but he hoped it would resolve naturally over time. "Samantha is protective of what we've built together," he would explain. "Once she sees that you're not trying to compete with her but complement what she brings to the table, things will improve." But after 18 months, I was beginning to wonder if some people simply couldn't accept that relationships and business dynamics evolve. Which brings me to the night that changed everything, the annual Martinez Industries Innovation Gala. This wasn't just a company party. It was the most prestigious event in our industry. Tech leaders, investors, journalists, and innovators from around the world gathered to celebrate breakthrough achievements and network with the most influential people in the field. For David, this gala represented the culmination of everything he'd worked to build. For me, it was an opportunity to finally feel like I truly belonged in his world. I had spent weeks preparing for this event, not just planning the logistics but also preparing myself to step fully into my role as David's partner in every sense of the word. David had asked me to give a brief speech about our new mentorship program for women in technology, an initiative that had been my idea and that I had developed over the past 6 months. This speech represented more than just a few minutes on stage. It was my official introduction to the industry as David's intellectual and creative partner. For the gala, I had chosen a dress that held deep, personal significance. It was an elegant navy blue gown that had belonged to my grandmother, Elena. She had been an immigrant who built a successful catering business from nothing, working 18-hour days to provide opportunities for her children that she never had herself. Before she passed away, she told me that this dress represented her dreams of what her granddaughters could achieve. "Someday, Masha," she had said, "you'll wear this dress to an event where you're not just attending, you're leading." The dress had been carefully preserved and altered to fit me perfectly. It wasn't the most expensive or fashionable option, but it represented everything I valued: family legacy, hard-earned success, and the belief that your background doesn't determine your potential. When I put it on that evening, I felt connected to my grandmother's strength and courage. I felt ready to step into my destiny. The gala began beautifully. The venue was spectacular, the presentations were inspiring, and I felt more confident and purposeful than ever before. David was in his element, graciously hosting hundreds of guests, while never failing to introduce me as his equal partner in both business and life. During cocktail hour, I had meaningful conversations with industry leaders who were genuinely interested in the mentorship program and wanted to discuss potential collaborations. Everything was perfect until about an hour before I was scheduled to speak. I was standing near the silent auction display, discussing our scholarship initiative with a group of potential donors, when Samantha approached our conversation circle. She was wearing a stunning black designer gown that perfectly complemented her blonde hair and confident demeanor. As always, she looked absolutely flawless. "Isabella," she said, joining our group with her characteristic charming smile, "you look lovely tonight. That dress is so unique." There was something in her tone that made me slightly uncomfortable, but I smiled and thanked her. "It was my grandmother's," I explained to the group. "She wore it to important business events when she was building her catering company." Something flickered across Samantha's face. Was it annoyance? Jealousy? I couldn't quite identify the emotion, but her smile became more forced. "How wonderfully sentimental," she said. "You must be nervous about your speech tonight. Public speaking can be so challenging when you're not used to addressing such an influential audience." Before I could respond, she continued, "Let me get you a glass of wine. You look like you could use something to calm your nerves." I wanted to decline. I never drank alcohol before important presentations, but declining seemed rude in front of the donors we were trying to impress. "That's very thoughtful," I said, "but I'm actually fine." "Nonsense," Samantha insisted, already walking toward the bar. "I'll be right back." She returned quickly with 2 glasses of red wine, navigating through the crowded room with the grace of someone completely comfortable in this environment. "Here you are," she said, extending 1 glass toward me. "This should help you relax before your big moment." As I reached for the glass, our hands met, and suddenly Samantha's grip seemed to falter. The wine glass tilted sharply, and deep crimson wine cascaded down the front of my grandmother's dress. The liquid soaked into the delicate navy fabric, creating dark stains that spread rapidly across the bodice and skirt. "Oh my God!" Samantha exclaimed, her hand flying to her mouth in apparent horror. "I'm so clumsy, I can't believe I just did that." The conversations around us stopped abruptly, and I could feel dozens of eyes turning toward us. The humiliation was immediate and overwhelming. I stood there in shock, watching helplessly as the wine continued to seep into my grandmother's dress. This wasn't just fabric, it was history, legacy, and irreplaceable memories. In that moment, I felt like my connection to my grandmother's strength and courage was being destroyed in front of everyone who mattered in my professional world. "It's okay," I managed to say, though my voice was trembling with emotion. "Accidents happen." But deep down, something felt wrong about the entire situation. The way Samantha had insisted on bringing me wine despite my declining. The way she had positioned herself when handing me the glass. The split-second expression I had caught on her face before she composed herself into appropriate shock and concern. "Let me help you clean this up," Samantha said, grabbing napkins from a nearby table. But instead of helping, her attempts to blot the stain seemed to make it worse, pressing the wine deeper into the delicate fabric. "No, please," I said, taking the napkins from her hands. "I need to handle this carefully." The humiliation intensified as more people noticed what had happened. Whispers started spreading through the crowd, and I could feel their curiosity and pity. This was supposed to be my moment to shine, to prove that I belonged in this world, to honor my grandmother's legacy by achieving something she could never have imagined. Instead, I was standing in the middle of the most important event of my career, covered in wine stains, feeling small and out of place. "I feel absolutely terrible," Samantha continued, her voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "That dress looks so meaningful to you. Is there anything I can do? I'll pay for professional cleaning, of course." But I knew that no amount of professional cleaning could restore my grandmother's dress. The wine had set into the vintage fabric, and the damage was permanent. "I need to go change," I said, trying to maintain my composure while my world felt like it was falling apart. "Please excuse me." I hurried toward the restroom, fighting back tears and trying to figure out how I was going to give the most important speech of my life while feeling completely destroyed inside. In the restroom, I spent 20 minutes trying everything possible to minimize the damage. Cold water, soap, gentle blotting. Nothing worked. The stains had become permanent reminders of my humiliation. As I looked at myself in the mirror, wearing my ruined dress and fighting back tears, I wondered if I would ever truly belong in David's sophisticated world, or if there would always be people determined to remind me that I was an outsider. But sometimes, the moments when we feel most defeated are actually preparing us for the most extraordinary revelations of our lives. I had no idea that David was already uncovering a truth that would change everything I thought I knew about that night, about Samantha, and about the real reason behind what had just happened to me. When I finally returned to the gala, having changed into a simple black backup dress I always kept in my car for emergencies, the evening felt completely different. The confidence I had carried all night was gone, replaced by a hollow feeling that made every smile feel forced, and every conversation feel like I was acting in a play I didn't understand. David was across the room, engaged in an animated discussion with several tech executives, completely unaware of what had just transpired. I made my way through the crowd, accepting sympathetic looks and well-meaning comments from guests who had witnessed my humiliation. "These things happen," they would say, but I could see the pity in their eyes. Some even seemed relieved that the woman who had appeared so confident earlier had been brought down to a more relatable level. It was as if my misfortune made them more comfortable with my presence in their exclusive world. The worst part was approaching my scheduled speaking time. In 30 minutes, I was supposed to deliver a presentation about empowering women in technology, about creating opportunities for people who didn't fit the traditional mold of success. How could I speak authentically about empowerment when I felt so powerless? How could I inspire others to believe in themselves when my own confidence had been shattered by a single moment of public humiliation? Samantha found me near the stage area, where I was reviewing my speech notes and trying to regain my composure. "Isabella, are you feeling better?" she asked with what appeared to be genuine concern. "I've been worried about you since the accident. I hope you're not too shaken up to give your presentation. Everyone is really looking forward to hearing about your mentorship program." Something about her tone felt off, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. There was an underlying current of satisfaction that didn't match her concerned words. "I'll be fine," I replied, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. "The show must go on, right?" "That's such a brave attitude," Samantha said, placing her hand on my arm in a gesture that felt more possessive than supportive. "I admire how you're handling this. Not everyone would be able to bounce back so quickly from such an embarrassing situation." The way she emphasized the word embarrassing made my stomach tighten, but I forced myself to smile and thank her for her concern. When the time came for my presentation, I walked onto the stage with as much dignity as I could muster. The audience was attentive and respectful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that some of them were looking at me differently now, not as David's equal partner, but as the woman who had been clumsy enough to spill wine all over herself at such an important event. My speech about empowerment felt hollow, even though the words themselves were true and important. Despite my internal turmoil, I managed to deliver the presentation professionally. I spoke about the barriers that prevent talented individuals from reaching their potential, about the importance of creating inclusive environments where everyone can thrive, and about our commitment to mentoring the next generation of leaders. The audience responded positively, and several people approached me afterward to discuss potential partnerships and collaborations. But throughout the rest of the evening, I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body. I smiled at the right moments, made appropriate conversation, and played the role of the gracious hostess. But inside, I was struggling with feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt that I hadn't experienced since my early days in David's world. David finally noticed that something was wrong during the closing reception. He found me standing alone on the balcony, getting some fresh air and trying to process everything that had happened. "You were incredible tonight," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Your speech was exactly what this industry needed to hear. I'm so proud of you." I leaned back against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent and trying to draw strength from his presence. "Thank you," I said softly. "It means everything to have your support." But I couldn't bring myself to tell him about the incident with Samantha. It felt too trivial, too embarrassing, and I didn't want to create unnecessary drama within his business partnership. "You seem different tonight," David observed, turning me around to face him. "Quieter than usual. Is everything okay?" I considered telling him the truth, but the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain that a simple accident with a wine glass had shattered my confidence so completely? How could I admit that I was letting Samantha's subtle undermining affect me so deeply? "I'm just tired," I said instead. "It's been a long day, and I put a lot of pressure on myself for tonight." David studied my face with the intensity that made him such a successful businessman. He could read people better than anyone I knew, and I could tell he sensed there was more to my subdued mood than simple fatigue. "Did something happen that you're not telling me about?" he asked gently. The concern in his voice almost broke my resolve to handle this situation on my own. For a moment, I considered confessing everything: the wine incident, my ruined dress, the feeling that Samantha had orchestrated the whole thing. But something held me back. "Nothing happened," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm just overwhelmed by how well everything went tonight. Sometimes success feels surreal, you know?" David didn't look entirely convinced, but he respected my privacy enough not to push further. He kissed my forehead and held me close, and for a few minutes I felt safe and protected from all the complicated emotions swirling inside me. The next morning, I woke up to find David already dressed and on his phone, speaking in the low, intense tones he used for serious business matters. I caught fragments of the conversation, something about security protocols and verification procedures. When he noticed I was awake, he quickly ended the call and came to sit on the edge of our bed. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, brushing a strand of hair away from my face. "How are you feeling today?" There was something different about his demeanor, a subtle tension that hadn't been there the night before. "I'm fine," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. "Who are you talking to?" "Just handling some security concerns," he said vaguely. "Nothing you need to worry about." But I could tell there was more to it than he was letting on. David was never evasive with me, unless he was protecting me from something. And that realization made me more curious than concerned. Over the next few days, David seemed preoccupied with something he wouldn't discuss. He spent more time than usual in his home office, made several mysterious phone calls, and asked seemingly random questions about the gala that made me wonder if he suspected something had happened that I hadn't told him about. "Did you notice anything unusual about Samantha's behavior at the gala?" he asked one evening over dinner. The question caught me off guard, and I could feel my cheeks flush with embarrassment. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "She seemed different somehow," David said, watching my reaction carefully. "More intense than usual. I'm wondering if the pressure of the event affected her differently this year." I wanted to tell him everything right then, about the wine, about my ruined dress, about the subtle ways Samantha had been undermining me for months, but I was still too embarrassed about my own reaction to the incident. "She seemed fine to me," I said, which was technically true. Samantha had seemed perfectly fine, almost pleased with herself, in fact. David nodded thoughtfully, but I could tell he wasn't satisfied with my answer. There was something calculating in his expression that reminded me of the focused intensity he brought to solving complex business problems. 3 days after the gala, David called me into his home office. "I need to show you something," he said, his voice serious in a way that made my heart race. He had his laptop open to what appeared to be security footage from the gala venue. I had our security team review all the footage from Saturday night as part of our standard post-event analysis. My stomach dropped as I realized what this might be about. "David, what's going on?" I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew. He turned the laptop screen toward me, and I could see footage from the gala's main reception area. The timestamp showed the exact time when Samantha had approached me with the wine glasses. "Watch this carefully," David said, his voice eerily calm. As the footage played, I watched myself having the conversation with the potential donors, saw Samantha approach our group, witnessed our brief exchange about my dress and my grandmother. Then came the moment when Samantha offered to get me wine, despite my clear reluctance to accept. But from this security camera angle, positioned above and to the side of where we had been standing, something became visible that I hadn't noticed in the moment. As Samantha handed me the wine glass, you could see the deliberate way she positioned her hand, the calculated angle of her wrist, the slight push she gave to the base of the glass that ensured it would tip toward me rather than simply fall. She did it on purpose. I whispered, watching the footage again with growing shock and anger. The accident that had humiliated me in front of hundreds of influential people, that had destroyed my grandmother's irreplaceable dress, that had shattered my confidence during one of the most important nights of my career. It had all been planned. "Yes," David said simply, his voice containing a coldness I had never heard before. "She did." I felt a complex mix of emotions washing over me. Vindication that my instincts had been correct, anger at Samantha's calculated cruelty, and something else I couldn't quite name. But there was also a growing sense of empowerment as I realized that my feelings of inadequacy had been based on a lie. "Why would she do this?" I asked, though part of me already understood. "Because she sees you as a threat," David explained, pausing the video on a frame that clearly showed Samantha's satisfied expression immediately after the wine spilled. "Not just to her relationship with me, but to her position of influence within the company. Your ideas, your perspective, your natural leadership abilities. They're changing the dynamic of everything we've built, and she's threatened by that." I stared at the frozen image on the screen, seeing Samantha's true nature revealed in that moment of unguarded satisfaction. "What are you going to do?" I asked, though I suspected David had already made his decision. There was something in his demeanor that reminded me of the stories I'd heard about his early business days, when he'd had to make difficult decisions to protect everything he'd worked to build. "Samantha has forgotten something fundamental about our partnership," David said, closing the laptop with deliberate precision. "She's forgotten that loyalty and integrity aren't optional qualities in my inner circle, they're requirements." The calm certainty in his voice sent a chill down my spine. I was seeing a side of David I'd only heard about in business magazines, the strategic mind that had built an empire by making tough decisions and following through on them completely. "David, please don't do anything too drastic," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure I meant it. "I know what she did was wrong, but she's been such an important part of building your company." David turned to face me fully, and I could see the intensity that had made him one of the most respected leaders in our industry. "Isabella, you have one of the most forgiving hearts I've ever encountered," he said gently. "It's one of the qualities I love most about you, but some people interpret forgiveness as weakness, and they use that against you." Samantha crossed a line, and if I don't address it, she'll see that as permission to escalate her behavior. The next morning, I watched from our bedroom window as David left for what he told me would be a difficult but necessary conversation with Samantha. He was dressed in his most formal business attire, carrying himself with the confident authority that commanded respect in boardrooms around the world. I knew that whatever happened in that meeting would change the dynamics of Martinez Industries forever. When David returned that evening, his expression was calm but final. "It's done," he said simply when I asked how the conversation had gone. "Samantha is no longer with the company. She'll receive a generous severance package, excellent references for future opportunities, and complete confidentiality about the circumstances of her departure. But she will never again be in a position to undermine you or anyone else in our organization." I felt a mixture of relief and guilt about Samantha's departure. Relief that I would no longer have to navigate her subtle hostility and calculated undermining. Guilt because I knew that losing her position at Martinez Industries would be devastating for someone whose entire identity was wrapped up in her professional success. But there was also something else, a growing sense of my own worth, and the recognition that I deserved to be treated with respect. The transformation in workplace dynamics was immediate and profound. Without Samantha's subtle resistance to my ideas and contributions, I found myself stepping into a leadership role that felt natural and authentic. David began including me in strategic planning sessions, where my perspective was genuinely valued and implemented. Other team members started approaching me directly with innovative proposals and collaborative ideas. Most importantly, I began to trust my own instincts and judgment in ways I never had before. The revelation about Samantha's deliberate sabotage had taught me that not all obstacles in our path are legitimate challenges we need to overcome through harder work or better performance. Sometimes, the barriers we face are artificially created by people who benefit from keeping us small and uncertain. 3 months later, I was promoted to Chief Innovation Officer at Martinez Industries, a position created specifically to harness my unique perspective and leadership style. My first major initiative was expanding the mentorship program I had presented at the gala into a comprehensive platform that connected established professionals with emerging talent across the entire tech industry. The program became a massive success, attracting participation from companies throughout our sector and earning recognition from major business publications. More importantly, it created real opportunities for hundreds of talented individuals who might otherwise have been overlooked by traditional networking and hiring practices. During the program's official launch event, I wore a new dress, one that I had chosen specifically for this moment. It was elegant and professional, but more importantly, it represented my own achievement rather than inherited legacy. As I stood on stage addressing an audience of industry leaders who now saw me as an equal, I thought about my grandmother and how proud she would have been to see her granddaughter not just succeeding, but using that success to create opportunities for others. Looking back now, I realize that the wine incident at the gala was actually a turning point that led to some of the most significant growth of my life. It forced me to confront the reality that not everyone would celebrate my success, and that I needed to develop the strength to persist in the face of deliberate opposition. It taught me that sometimes the people who seem most supportive on the surface can be the ones working hardest to undermine your confidence behind the scenes. Most importantly, it showed me that I had married a man who would not only support my dreams but actively protect my ability to achieve them. David's response to Samantha's behavior demonstrated that he truly saw me as his equal partner, worth defending and worth fighting for. That knowledge transformed our relationship from one where I sometimes felt like a grateful beneficiary of his success, to one where I felt like a valued contributor to our shared vision. The experience also taught me about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who genuinely want to see you succeed. After Samantha's departure, David and I rebuilt the leadership team with individuals who shared our values of collaboration, integrity, and mutual empowerment. The company culture transformed into something more innovative, inclusive, and successful than it had ever been before. Today, Martinez Industries is recognized not just for its technological innovations, but for its commitment to developing diverse leadership and creating opportunities for people from all backgrounds. We've proven that success doesn't require stepping on others or protecting your position through sabotage and manipulation. Instead, the greatest achievements come from building systems where everyone can contribute their unique strengths and perspectives. As for Samantha, I heard through industry connections that she eventually found a position with another tech company where her skills could be better utilized in an environment that suited her competitive nature. I hope she learned something from the experience about the difference between healthy competition and destructive sabotage. Sometimes losing everything we thought we wanted creates space for discovering what we actually need. The evening when David showed me that security footage will always be etched in my memory as the night I learned to trust my instincts, value my own worth, and recognize that true partnership means having someone who will stand up for you, even when you're too kind to stand up for yourself. It was the night I realized that my grandmother's legacy wasn't just about wearing her dress to important events. It was about carrying forward her strength, determination, and refusal to let anyone dim her light. Every time I step onto a stage now, every time I lead a meeting or make a strategic decision that impacts hundreds of employees and thousands of program participants, I carry with me the knowledge that I belong exactly where I am. Not because someone gave me an opportunity, but because I earned it through hard work, integrity, and the courage to keep believing in myself even when others tried to convince me I wasn't worthy of my dreams. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.